And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. We are live at Chickies and Pete's at the Tropicana in Atlantic City. And don't forget this 4 o'clock hour of the Sports Bash. It's brought to you by Jersey Cow, a great place for the family to hang out and eat ice cream. Jersey Cow ice cream is a year-round thing. They have 2 locations in Northfield and in Brigantine. You can check them out every day from noon until 10. Jersey Cow ice cream is a year-round thing. Eagles getting ready for the Pittsburgh Steelers. A big matchup here. Really, when you have an AFC, NFC matchup, it doesn't have a lot to do with the tie-breaking scenarios, but it's a big game for Philadelphia. Coming off of all the drama this week, obviously, can the Eagles move on, move past it, and get ready for a big opponent? Well, Andrew DiCecco from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, is set to join us here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. He was there yesterday with the massive amount of people. Andrew, in your time covering the Philadelphia Eagles in that locker room, have you ever seen more people around one locker than A.J. Brown yesterday?
Jordan Mailata was close. It was definitely a sight to behold, knowing that they answered. They stood there and they answered every question that we had for them, and they didn't shy away from anything. But they knew the questions were coming, and there was certainly the turnout there because everyone was interested to hear what a lot of the prominent players and, of course, Jalen and AJ had to say.
Yeah, I mean, and you said they knew it was coming. How do you think they handled it? Is this whole mess, number one, was it blown out of proportion? Number two, is it behind them?
Well, I think that they handled it really well, all things considered. And in particular, I thought Jalen Hurts' presser was tremendous. But it's hard for me to say whether it was blown out of proportion or not. I don't like to speculate on things until I'm done a thorough job in reporting, and that's something that I've been working on throughout the week. But it seems to be, at least on based on the answers that we have, that it was probably blown out of proportion. Now, does that mean that there's no tension there? No. There probably is. There's naturally going to be tension when the passing game isn't what it needs to be. There are shortcomings in the offense, and you have a player in A.J. Brown who's highly competitive, is open on many plays, and he wants the football. He wants to also help contribute to the win. But where Jalen is, and where I thought his messaging was exceptional, is that he's willing to do whatever it takes to win, even if that means him sacrificing his own numbers and playing whatever style, taking on whatever philosophy the Philadelphia Eagles need to win the game. And he said, that's kind of what it takes is what it takes, and no one cares how you get it done, and just that you get it done. So I think that's kind of what you're going to expect to see. Pretty much more of the same, although giving everything that sort of transpired, I have to wonder if the Eagles are going to take to the air or have a little bit more effectiveness going to the air and peppering AJ with targets this week as a byproduct of this, because I do think that there's going to be a lot of good that comes from this.
Well, and the interesting part here, Andrew, is the Steelers are very good against the run. The Eagles, this might be the week, and it's almost like, hey, you gave A.J. all these targets. Was it because of what happened? Well, no, Pittsburgh's really good against the run, and, we knew that. But I guess the question off this is, can they be more productive in the pass game? What have you seen about this pass game that needs to be better? And, it seems that a lot of people breaking down the film say they're leaving meat on the bone here. So can they be better in the pass game? A.J. said it. We need to be better passing. I think we all agree. Can they?
Yeah, they are leaving some meat on the bone in the passing game. Look, there are plays to be made. And so I know a lot of folks are going to be quick to point to coaching. When players are open, I have a hard time going there, especially when you've already swapped out your quarterback coach and offensive coordinator. A lot of the issues that persist with the passing game lie at the feet of Jalen Hurts. And I'm talking about hesitant to pull the trigger on downfield throws in which he normally would or has in the past. He's not fitting the ball into tight windows. Unless a player is wide open, he's really gun shy and hesitant about putting the football on the numbers. And I just think he's missing reads. And he's holding on to the ball a lot longer than he has, and he's taking bad sacks. So to me, it almost seems like a quarterback that's really taken to being risk averse, and he's only turned the football over twice since the bye week. So there's something to be said for that. Deserves some credit there. But is that at the expense of those explosive pass plays that he's been prone to do in the past? I mean, I'm starting to think that is probably the case. But, I mean, there's a lot of meat left on the bone, and there are players open. And if the passing game's to get right, Mike, it all starts with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, it does start with Jalen Hurts. Now, he said something yesterday, basically like, I don't care what it looks like. That's just the way it is. That's the way I am. When he's missing guys, do you think this was I thought Dan Orlovsky said something during the week. He said there's a difference between playing bad and being bad. Is this perpetual, or is this kind of like a 1 week thing where he just didn't have a good game?
I mean, if you look really close to it, close into the numbers and really rack your brain to kind of play some of those games out in your mind, it's been a trend that's sort of persisted throughout the season, and missing open players, holding on to the football. A lot of the slow starts are a byproduct of stalled drives due to an inept passing game. Now, there have been times where Saquon Barkley, the defense really, first and foremost, does enough to keep the offense in the game, and then Saquon Barkley revs up, which allows the passing game to sort of take shape, but it isn't often until the third or fourth quarter. And Jalen Hurts has made some really big-time throws late in these games to help the Eagles win. But it has to be more consistent. It has to be over a 60-minute period. You can't just turn it on when the stakes are really high in the postseason. And when I see the clunkiness and just really the static nature of their passing game early on, it doesn't necessarily come to play design or route concepts, because when players are open, you have to hit them. You have to be able to complete that, and you have to be able to sustain drives. And for whatever reason, he just seems reluctant to become a little bit more aggressive in his throws. I think that's fair to say.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, you got a big week against the Steelers here. Both teams 10 wins. Both teams obviously looking to improve their seeding. Philadelphia, the 2 seed, Steelers at 3 right now. They've lost 10 straight games in Philadelphia. A lot of people say, what's the difference between these two teams as you see it right now? When you look at the Steelers, what's the strength of that team and how it matches up what Philadelphia likes to do?
Well, they're a physical football team. They're going to challenge Saquon Barkley and the Eagles' run game. This, to me, is a football lover's dream, because it's a lot of trench play. It's a lot of mano-a-mano type stuff. This is where the game is going to be won. It's going to be within the trenches, because the Steelers have a really strong defensive line. The Eagles have a really good offensive line. I think Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and Milton Williams are going to have a really strong showing going against 2 rookies along the Pittsburgh Steelers interior offensive line, and Mason McCormick from South Dakota State and Zach Frazier. That's going to be another interesting element to this. But I think that what they do really well is they pressure the quarterback and they stop the run. So it's going to be another physical outing on Sunday, and I can't wait.
Yeah, Philly likes to run the ball. That we know. They're very good at stopping the run here. We talk about this passing game. Is this a week for Philly's passing game to get going?
I think so, and I ultimately think it will be. And it feels like we're always waiting for that week where something's going to pop, because aside from, I would say, that the opener, when they were in Brazil, you didn't really see that pass-happy aerial attack that we all expected when the season was beginning. And right now, when you look at what the Steelers have, they are a little bit susceptible and vulnerable to giving up big plays on the back end. And Joey Porter Jr., their rookie corner from Penn State, loved him coming out of the draft. And he's someone who's struggled with penalties, but he's had a decent rookie season. But by and large, they had Minkah Fitzpatrick back there. They have playmakers, but for whatever reason, they're not playing with the same level of confidence and cohesiveness that the Eagles secondary is playing with. And I think there's going to be opportunities for the Eagles to really threaten down the field and work the intermediary levels, which this is where it really behooves Jalen Hurts to be on his A game, because there will be plays to be made there, although it could be tough sledding when you try to run the football.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch the run game up against the Steelers, because a lot of people ask the question, well, can this style of play, can you win like this? Can a team that just runs the ball predominantly win in the playoffs? Well, if you can run it against Pittsburgh, what does that say about you when you get to the playoffs?
Well, that says that you can really run against anybody. They found a way to do it against the Baltimore Ravens. The Steelers are really another physical football team. It's a good test. They have good players that you have to account for. I would argue that they have more pass rushers and disruptors up front that you have to account for in Keanu Benton, who I really like out of Wisconsin. Alex Highsmith is there. TJ Watt's there. Cam Hayward's having a really good season. So you can't just fixate on one player, and that's where I believe that the Eagles' offensive line, I believe, can contain anyone. But how long are they going to be able to neutralize 4 different players? That's where I think that it might be tough sledding for Saquon, as good as he is and as good as the Eagles are doing in that aspect of the game. But it just seems like it's going to be ripe for the taking to take to the aerial attack, and I think that should prove fruitful if they're willing to stay with it and get some early completions and allow Jalen Hurts to settle into the flow of the game where he doesn't feel like overburdened or he's overthinking things and forcing bad decisions.
When you look at the Eagles' defense this week, I know you wrote about Cooper DeJean and the lessons he learned last week. That was probably, I was on a Steeler podcast last night, and they asked me about the Eagles' secondary with George Pickens being out. Does that change the dynamics? And I said, normally the way this Eagles' secondary has been, when you have Lamb, we have Mitchell. When you have Jamar Chase, we have Mitchell. Last week was really the first time that a receiver had a kind of a big day, went over 100 yards. What did Cooper DeJean learn about that game last week in this Eagles secondary and how they might match up with Pittsburgh, who's going to likely be without George Pickens?
Yeah, he's doubtful. George Pickens is doubtful. I would be highly surprised. And they're going to lean on the tight end, Pat Freiermuth, and Calvin Austin, and a host of younger players. But what did he learn? Well, he said that was a really big challenge because the way that Adam Thielen plays, he wins with savviness, crafty route running. He's really good at separating from press. He doesn't have that downfield speed, but he's really good at manipulating defensive backs and setting them up for a play, for a double move maybe later in the game. And I think Cooper learned, and Cooper, to his credit, all of his completions weren't against Cooper. But I think that he showed that he's going to line it back up and not waver or have his confidence shaken in any way based on the outcome of a given play. He lines it back up kind of like Quinyon Mitchell, in that they have such a short memory and they're not fazed by what happened on the previous play. And he continued to compete. He was continuing to stay physical, and he trusted his technique and didn't get grabby or bail on his technique or in certain coverage situations. So I think he learned how to face a veteran receiver and how to play it. And he also learned, there are some lessons to be taken away and how players like that can set you up for a bigger play later in the game.
Yeah, how does Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, when they made the change to Russell Wilson, that was an obviously interesting change. Some people said, well, you're winning without him. But they are 6-1. They average 28.4 points per game since Wilson has become the starter. That's the 6th best in the NFL. When you think of Steelers, do you think of this as like a high-powered offense?
No, not really. They're a ball control offense, and I believe they rank first in that area. So that's they're able to grind it out with Najee Harris, who doesn't even – he's only averaging, I think, 70-ish yards a game. George Pickens, when he's healthy, is a really good go up and get it receiver. He plays a bully ball style. Pat Freiermuth's a good red zone target. But they don't have this stellar offense that you worry about hitting those explosive plays or anything like that, but they're really good at controlling the football, converting on third downs, and keeping the offense on schedule. But again, they're best adept at running the football, which is where I think that the Eagles defense is really going to answer the bell here, because they bottle up running backs and they almost take it personal when a team tries to force feed the football to their running back and challenge their physicality. I think this is where the Eagles meet the moment. But I don't know that the Steelers have a ton there to really cause a dent, especially in terms of the passing game.
All right, getting ready for the game. Let's bring it back to the beginning here. You were in that locker room. Does everything seem like it's behind them? Jordan Mailata said this isn't the A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts show. It's on to Pittsburgh. Did you get the feeling that universally in that locker room they're on to Pittsburgh?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Even Nick Sirianni said, when he was asked, I think it was Sal Powell, he said, what's the mood of the locker room? And Nick Sirianni said, we're ready to go. We're ready to work. And that's been the message throughout the season. The players, this group of players, they're They love to work for one, but they're so fixated on going 1-0 every week. They're worried about the opponent. They're not looking ahead. They're not looking back. They're trying to atone for whatever shortcomings that they're able to take away from the previous game and worry about them, worry about themselves. How can they get better as a team? And they know what's in front of them. They know they have a special team here. And a lot of the key veterans know exactly what caused the downside last year, and they're going to ensure that that doesn't happen again.
And Andrew, just to interject, that's the basis of what A.J. Brown said, right? He said, last year I waited. This year I wasn't waiting. I didn't want to wait until it started to spiral downhill, and he saw some, little cracks maybe that things were going wrong, and that's why he spoke up.
Yeah, and he's a captain, and he leads in a different way, and he's not satisfied with a certain element of the offense that's going to be critical to postseason success. And I think he tried to nip it in the bud, and obviously, it spread like wildfire. Brandon Graham's comments, and he made an assumption based off of AJ's post-game comments, and here we are. But I think that was AJ, like you said, and like AJ said, trying to get out in front of it and make sure that whatever their shortcomings are, it doesn't surface at the most inopportune time, and they have 4 weeks to rectify it and get it right, but they have to start now. And I think he was just trying to, point it out and recognize that, we have to be better in this area, and it was perceived differently depending on who you ask. But that's all that it was, in my opinion.
Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. It is the Eagles and the Steelers this Sunday on 97.3 ESPN. The coverage at 3. They kick off at 4:25. Thank you, buddy.
Appreciate it, man.